The following is a presentation of iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
Good evening to those of you watching on iRacing Live and YouTube, and welcome to coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV. I am James Pike, joined upstairs in the booth by my colleague Brian Macklin, and downstairs in our virtual trailer by producer Cisco Scaramuzza, who's lovely and talented as ever. And tonight we join you from the first state and the capital of the first state, Dover, Delaware, at Dover International Speedway, where we go for 170 laps this evening. Brian, should be a fun one because this place is just fast everywhere you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually had the opportunity to drive this track in real life. I got to do the Richard Petty experience here several years ago, and this track is absolutely insane how fast it is and how quickly you sail off into the corner and then you dip down about 20 feet going off into the corner. This is one of the most challenging, if not the most challenging track that you will see these guys come to every year, and it's going to provide some really good racing as the tires wear out and these guys have to start searching around for some grip. This race is really going to get interesting to see who can move the lineup and really be able to keep the speed throughout the entire run.
And keep their car from doing anything funky on corner exit. I think those of us who have been around the sim long enough to see this track a few times know just how hard it is to get these cars to cooperate off of the corners, and it is so easy to lose the rear end and send it down into the inside retaining wall.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, it is such a difficult racetrack. The corners shorten up so quickly. You come up off the corner and it's a very tight exit to the corner. If you don't hit your marks just perfect, you're going to come up and hit that outside wall. And then there's a little hump coming up off of turn 2 and off of turn 4 that can really upset the car and get you sideways coming off the corner. Watching these guys in practice, I saw a lot of them struggling with that here tonight. And as the tires wear out and they get hot, it's going to be even harder to come up across that bump coming off both those corners. I expect we'll see quite a few issues off of turns 2 and 4 tonight.
Well, we'll look for that as the race gets going. But for now, we'll take a look here at our playoff grid after 12 races. We've made it to the halfway point through the regular season. And through 12 races, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drivers with victories, and quite a few of them from the Aegis Motorsports stable. And then you've got a handful of drivers who are currently pointing their way into the playoffs if they were to start this weekend. And then you've got the cut line, which we start to pay attention to at this point in the year because it starts to take shape here, usually in the first months of June. Right now, Scott Simley is the last driver in. He has 13 points on Steve Gottschalk and 22 on Nelson Rivera, and then you got CJ LaVere and Doug Roth all within the 25 points or less range. So should be a pretty interesting battle, especially as we start progressing through the summer months here to see who will grab that last playoff position.
Well, not only that, but if you are Stefan Marinak or Scott Semley or even Carl Shedd, who sits 14th in the points right now, you have to be mindful of the fact that one of these guys that's on the outside of this cut line could get a win, and a win secures you a spot in the playoffs. So if, say, tonight, Steve Gottschalk, who's sitting 17th right now, if he comes out here and he wins at Dover, he's going to jump ahead of Scott Simley regardless of the points, and he's going to push Scott Simley out of the playoffs. So these guys have to be very mindful of that while they're trying to point their way in. They need to keep in mind that if something like that were to happen, you get a surprise winner, they may not necessarily be in the position that they want to be in. So they're going to be very careful of that, especially as you mentioned over the next couple of months, because we're only about 13 races away from the playoffs kicking off. There's not a lot of time for mistakes anymore. One bad race can affect your opportunity to make the playoffs and can potentially take you out of the playoffs.
And then especially if you're right around that cut line, I think you have to ask the question of whether or not you decide to push for it and just go get the win no matter what the cost to get yourself into the playoffs, or whether or not you try and race consistently and cleanly and hope that other people mess up around you. It's a big question that you have to ask, but sometimes the way these races shake out, your hand ends up getting forced and you go one way or the other by default, especially when we hit August.
Yeah, and that's the trickiest part about it, because we have a couple of wild card races coming up that can really change the complexion of this thing. We have 2 road courses in the summer stretch. We have Daytona coming up at the beginning of July. That's a big wild card where anybody and everybody that's in the field has an opportunity to win. Those are the types of races where you really have to be mindful of your position and figure out what the risk versus reward is.
So we'll watch those drivers on the cut line. But for now, we're going to take you to the starting grid, which is led off tonight by Dylan Jones in the 11 car, your pole sitter for tonight's race. Joined on the outside of the front row by David Comstock, who will be in the playoffs come September. Anthony DeBarro starts third. Daniel Everhart outside of him will begin from fourth tonight. Fifth place is where you'll find the 44 Brandon Bowie. Andrew Farinars will start from 6th. Trevor Rapallo, Daytona winner from February, will begin in 7th. Teammate to him, Joseph Tice, starts 8th. Teammate to them, David Washington, starts 9th. 3 Aegis cars right there together in the top 10. And then Shane Ewing to round out your top 10, starting 10.
Nelson Rivera will start in the 11th position tonight. He's one of those guys on the outside of the cut line right now. Then we have Thomas Lattimore starting in P12. Sean Boundy is 13th. John Abbott is starting 14th here tonight. Mike Kelly starts 15th. Check out Sean Casto. He's got a pretty cool looking car supporting autism awareness here. He starts 16th. Then we have Dwayne Vincent starting 17th. Braden Whittaker starting 18th. Nick Silver also running a really nice autism awareness car. He starts 19th, and rounding out the top 20, Gabe Wood.
AJ Browning will begin from 21st, then Scott Walter starts 22nd. Randy Yoakum will begin 23rd. Carl Shedd starts tonight from 24th, and then last driver to take time, Austin Coop, begins from 25th. Drivers not to take time here from all the way on back, Lionel Calixto, 26th. Corey Wolf, 27th. Ross Cato begins from 28th. 29th is a new driver to this series. Giovanni Bramante joins the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series this week, and I suspect he might be one to watch out for. He is your Young Lions Division champion of the 2016 Bojangles Summer Showdown at Charlotte Motor Speedway, so big things already happening for the 37 in the real world. You'll want to watch him and see as he comes up through the back, and then Nathan Little and Douglas Wyatt to round out your field. So you've got the grid. We'll take a look now at our track facts here at the Monster Mile. We're going to go for 170 laps, and that will be 170 miles because we go a mile a lap here. In the turns, you have 24 degrees of banking and then 9 degrees on the front straight and the back straight, and it's those 9 degrees more often than not, Brian, as we said at the top of the broadcast. Those are the tricky pieces here of this track that you have to watch out for and make sure you get off them cleanly and correctly, because it's very easy to lose control of the car in those spots.
Yeah, absolutely. And this track is known for being a self-cleaning racetrack because there is such steep banking all the way around the racetrack. When an accident happens, they tend to drift to the bottom of the racetrack. You're going to have to watch for that and see how many cars are able to get by cleanly when the big one does happen here as we get ready to go.
Glad to have you with us tonight on iRacing Live and YouTube for this, the 13th round of the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series. We are green and away from Dover, Delaware, and Dylan Jones got a really nice jump there, about 3 car lengths back to David Comstock, who didn't really get going all that well to start off, but Jones will jump away off the front of this field. Your first side-by-side battle, go back to Anthony DeBarro and Andrew Farinars there, battling for the 5th position.
And Freenars is trying to defend that position from Anthony DeBarro as they work through 3 and 4, getting ready to complete lap 1. It looks like Freenars is going to get the run he needs off the corner. He's going to clear DeBarro, and he's going to stay high in the middle of 1 and 2. That's going to allow DeBarro to get back to his door as they try to work through turns 1 and 2 now. Going underneath the turn 2 bridge. They're still side by side as they head back to turn 3, battling hard here for this 4th position just 2 laps in. Freenars does not want to give it up. Now he finally has to as DeBarro gets a good run. Checks up coming off the corner. They almost make contact.
Nearly an incident there for Farinars, but he just overdrove corner entry a little bit and sent it up the hill a little bit more than he wanted to, and that gave DeBarro the hole that he needed to get in and go grab that 4th position now. So He'll try and set his sights on the number 90 of Daniel Everhart, but they really have strung out quickly. Almost surprisingly, as far as I'm concerned, because you've got a solid half second between Jones, your leader, and Comstock, and then after Everhart, you have 0.7 of a second back to Navarro, and that's really where your battle pack begins. You've got those three there, Navarro, Farinars, and Bowie, and then it's Tice, Washington, and Rapallo, and a yellow flag comes out to change everything here on lap 4.
Yeah, looking to see what happens. It looks like that was the 37 machine. Giovanni Bramante is around on the backstretch. He made contact. I'm not sure who that was that he was racing with, but he made contact coming off of turn 2 and bounced it off the inside wall. And that was the number 97 of Lionel Kalisto. They were racing side by side coming off the corner. And actually, he might have just got a little loose. I don't really know that there was any contact there, James. They were racing pretty hard, but I think there was no contact when it was all said and done. I think he just got sideways.
Trouble then early for Giovanni Bramante, and not necessarily the debut that he wanted into this series. Looks like his night is going to end very prematurely here. A lot of front end damage to that number 37 machine, so he'll come down pit road, as will the rest of the field here. Looks like you've got some drivers that are going to jump in, especially from the back. I see Sean Boundy down pit road, Thomas Lattimore, and a few other folks. John Abbott, I think, coming down pit road as well. So this early yellow flag shuffling the pit strategy around just a little bit.
Yeah, one leader did come to pit road. That was Anthony DeBarro. He surrendered the 4th position on the racetrack to come to pit road. He felt like tires were important at this point. He's in his box. They're going to get 4 tires and fuel, and he's going to be back down and away. But he's going to lose a ton of track position by making this call because most of the field elected to stay out here.
A ton of track position, but the tires will be somewhat fresher, and he might have a little bit more fuel, so could look for a caution at the end of a green flag run and maybe 40, 50 laps or so to get himself the track position back, or he'll drive his way up back through the field. We'll have to wait and see what happens on that front, but in the meantime, though, I think if you're David Comstock especially, you're grateful that you get this yellow flag so early because you get the chance to redo that restart. And Comstock did not get going at all. It was not a good jump from the number 42 machine there when we got the green. Lost about 2 or 3 car lengths. And I think if you're him, Macklin, what do you try and do, and how do you approach this restart differently to make sure that you don't have the gap pop up the way it did on the green?
Well, it's just such a difficult place to restart at in general because you're always dealing with the banking. Whether it's in the middle of the corner or on the straightaway, you have banking to deal with where you don't necessarily at other tracks. A lot of the tracks you have a more flat surface when you get up onto the front stretch. Here, because of the banking, the wheel spin is just so bad, and it's hard to get up through the gears. And not to mention the fact that this is a concrete surface versus asphalt. The concrete is not as easy to get up to speed on as the asphalt surface is. There's a lot of challenges to this track, and the restarts are just one of the few that can really be a heartache for these drivers throughout the race.
All a matter of second gear versus third gear, and which one do you go with? The tricky question here for drivers when we get restarts like this. But our first restart of the race will come as we begin lap 8, which is what they'll hit when they come back to the stripe. Dylan Jones has led since the beginning. Will lead them back to green. Then it's Everhart, Comstock, Farinars, and Bowie. That will be your top 5 as they come back around to take the green flag once again. Pace car comes off. Everybody slows up. Another really good restart there from Jones, and Comstock might have had an even worse restart this time around than he did the first time around because Everhart got it for the most part and is able to drop into the second position from the high line, and then Comstock here is stuck fighting Farinars, trying to make sure that he doesn't lose the third position as they go into turn 3.
And it looks like Farinars is going to be able to get the run he needs. He's going to clear Comstock as they come off turn 4. He got a great run through the middle of the corner. Comstock's going to have to heed that position, and he's going to fall back to 4th. And once again, like you mentioned, he just did not get up through the gears at all. on that last restart. One person that did get an amazing restart in the back of the pack was Anthony DeBarro. He made it 3 wide back there going through turns 1 and 2 and was able to pick up about 4 spots just in that one corner. So he did a really good job. He's taking advantage of the fresh tires and trying to get as many of those positions back as he can right now while the tires are at their best. He's battling hard back here with Sean Casto and a host of others trying to make that outside line work, and he's going to maybe think about 3 wide again, but he thought better of it when he was trying to pass Dwayne Vincent. Now he's starting to work his way back up inside the top 15 here, James.
We'll keep an eye on DeBarro and his charge back up through the front of this field as this run progresses, assuming it stays green here for a few more laps than normal after that very short green flag run to start this race. Meanwhile, Everhart has done a much better job of keeping with Jones than Comstock was able to on that first green flag run. We saw the gap jump out to about a half second by the time that yellow came out. It's only at 0.2 of a second right now and hasn't really changed all that much. So, going to be interesting to see what happens with Jones and Everhart as they progress. And then you've got Farinars, who hasn't really been able to drive away from David Comstock, and Brandon Bowie right there too. So interesting bunch of people here up in the top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been the story for Dylan Jones. He leads a lot of laps early, and then for whatever reason cannot seem to close the deal out. It's going to be interesting to see if he can do it here tonight. He's got another fast car like he has pretty much every single week. Just going to have to wait and see if he can close out the deal. He's trying to hold off Daniel Everhart, who has stayed, as you mentioned, right on his back bumper since the drop of the green flag. These two have jumped out to about a second lead, 1.2 seconds actually, back to Farinars. They've kind of got this thing in their own hands at this point of the race. If they wanted to go and battle it out, they could. They don't really have any competition from behind. There's a little bit of a battle brewing right behind those guys, though, as Comstock is starting to close back in on Farinars, trying to catch him and try to take that third position back. But he's got some competition behind him. Brandon Bowie and David Washington are right there as well, knocking on the door, seeing if they can't try to steal a couple of positions away. David Washington did not get the qualifying effort he was looking for, James. He started 9th in this race. He's starting to make his way up, though. He's up to 6th.
David Washington, your championship grid points leader at the moment, to drive his way back up through the front of the field, and not necessarily having a bad go of it so far. He'll take what he can get at this juncture.
Yeah, he's actually battling side by side with David Comstock now as they go to 1 and 2. Comstock's going to give that position up. He also lost the position to Brandon Bowie, so Comstock's going to go from running 4th to 6th in about a half a lap. And that's going to move Bowie up to 4th, and Washington will be in 5th now as these guys are starting to make their way closer to the front of this thing. Just trying to do whatever they can to get track position, but also trying to manage tires at the same time. This track, as we saw yesterday in the Cup race, it eats tires alive, and the longer the runs go, the worse the tires get. You do not want to run really hard at this point of the race and wear out that right front or even that right rear with as loose as this thing gets off corner exit. You don't want to use that tire up too early because you need it in case we get a 30 or 40 or even 50 lap green flag run.
You'll have to watch the fall off here. You can't burn them all too quickly because it's about a second from beginning to end of the run if it goes green flag all the way. So want to make sure that you watch your tires here. They do go down quicker than you would like, quicker than you would think. Meanwhile, Brandon Bowie now has jumped up a few places into the 3rd position here and is now leading that second pack, trying to chase down Everhart and Jones. So that 44 Ford Fusion beginning to make moves up towards the front of the field.
Yeah, up to that 4th position, or 3rd position rather, and trying to track down the 2 race leaders as he's able to get away from David Washington and David Comstock for the moment. Comstock, though, just made a move on Farinars to take back that 5th position and move himself back into the top 5. So starting to go back in the right direction after not having such a good restart and a good couple of laps. He's starting to go back in the direction he wants. But now David Washington's putting a ton of pressure on Brandon Bowie as he almost made contact with him in the middle of the corner, right on the back bumper. And it looks like this time as they go to 1 and 2, Bowie is going to pull over and let him go. And indeed he does. David Washington slots into the 3rd position and now has a 1.5 second gap to run down the 2 race leaders who are still bumper to bumper up here. Dylan Jones and Everhart racing pretty hard for the lead.
not really much of a contest from Bowie there on Washington. So our points leader will begin to try and chase down these front two drivers. And boy, could he use a good run at this point, because he's just had a host of terrible luck here in April and in May. Hasn't really had any of the finishes that he's wanted. So looks like Washington's right the ship finally with a good run here at Dover.
Yeah, he is. He's up to third at this point. He's actually running a little bit quicker than our race leaders, as he gained about 0.2 of a second on Dylan Jones that last time by, cut the gap down from 1.3 to 1.1, and he has pulled away from Bowie, Comstock, and Freenarge, all of those three drivers that were just racing with him about 5 laps ago maybe. He's definitely tracking the race leaders down. But how about Anthony DeBarro? He came to pit road on that early caution, fell well outside of the top 15. James, he's up to 7th right now, and he's not too far behind these drivers. He's about a second behind Freenarge, and he's got roughly about 6 or 7 laps fresher tires. If he hasn't used them up too much coming up through the field, this could play into his favor if this thing stays green for a while.
If it stays green, though, that's the big question. Now, we've got a lot of guys racing side by side. That change very easily, but if we can get maybe 10 to 20 more green flag laps, this might be a move that pays off for DeBarro, because you're right, he's almost back up to where he was. He got the yellow, so any positions after, I'd say, probably validates his decision to come down to pit road, but also, I think most importantly to the rest of the field and to the spotters and the crew chiefs out there, validates the importance of fresh tires here at Dover, because you need them if you can get them. They make a world of difference.
Oh, absolutely. Just 2 or 3 laps on tires can make a big difference over having fresh tires. And we saw it yesterday in the Cup race, just a handful of laps on tires and everybody was wanting to come to pit road. It's going to be the same story here tonight. You get a 5-lap run, and the majority of this field, especially after seeing what DeBarro has been able to do, they're going to want to come in and get tires for themselves as well. So certainly something that the rest of these crew chiefs are going to be looking at throughout the rest of the race, seeing how much it worked out for him. But I'm looking back at David Washington. He was gaining on the race leaders just a couple of laps ago, but since then he has fallen off a bit, as he's back to 1.6, almost 1.7 seconds now behind the race leaders. So you have to wonder if maybe he finally hit that point where he just used too much of the tires up, or if maybe Dylan Jones was just managing his tires pretty good, waiting for them to get to a point where he could actually charge this track the way he wanted to. But at this point, Washington's not making the progress that we were seeing him make once he got ahead of those other guys and was able to get into that 3rd position.
Might also be a matter of whether or not he thinks it's worth his while at this juncture to try and push the way he had been to get up to those two, knowing that we've got a lot of laps left in this race. Almost 140 here, so you know, we've got time to get back up to the front. If you're any of these drivers, you know, maybe 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and Washington too. You don't necessarily have to just destroy the wheels and destroy the tires to get back up towards the leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a little bit of a battle back here. Comstock just moved into the 4th position, and here comes Anthony DeBarro battling side by side with Anthony Freenarge for that 6th position. Freenarge is going to once again use the outside line to hold him off and try to hold on to that position, and he did so right there, as he was able to get clear of DeBarro and maintain that 6th position for the moment. And that's something I have noticed these guys have been able to do so far tonight, is use the outside line to defend your position. It's not something we see here very often at Dover, but so far, at least with a couple of these drivers at the front, they may not choose to run that outside line as the preferred groove, but when they have a battle going on, they're able to use that line to pinch down the guy on the inside and keep them from getting the run up off the corner and be able to defend the position. And that's what we've seen Freenarge do quite a few times here tonight. A couple of those occasions against DeBarro, as he's doing right now.
Definitely the best battle here within the top 5. And boy, is DeBarro putting the pressure on Freenarge. It's impressive that he's been able to keep that car planted and not slip up the hill in any way, shape, or form, because on corner exit especially, because that number 96 is getting off the corner so well. He's been within maybe, what, an 1/8 of a car length, the bumper, but a yellow flag comes out. So game changers again all over the place. Yellow flag number 2 of the evening.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what happened here to bring out our second caution of the race. It looks like there was some contact with the number 41 machine of Nathan Little. and I believe that's the 08 machine of Thomas Lattimore going through turns 1 and 2. It looks like Lattimore got into the back of Nathan Little, turned him sideways, and he was able to get it caught up against the wall, get it going back straight, but he's got some pretty significant damage to the left front of the number 41 machine. Going to need to come to the attention of his pit crew to get some damage repairs, and I believe now, once everybody gets caught up, we're going to see our first round of pit stops for the majority of our race leaders. Pit road is open, and here they come, James. They're coming to pit road.
Nobody really taking the chance, I don't think. We'll wait for just a little bit to see if anybody decides to do it, but no, they'll all come down pit road and get the tires. I think DeBarra might have proven that in his little run right there, even though it was only about a 5-lap difference on his good years compared to the rest of the field. It made a big difference in the way he could run up through the field. So Dylan Jones leads them down pit road. No complications, it looks like, for anybody. They'll all slide in and stop, and at this point, you're at the mercy of the sim to figure out whether or not you get off pit road first.
And Dylan Jones getting his right side tires right now, filling that car up with fuel, trying to get as quick a pit stop as he can to see if he can win the race off pit road. He's got the preferred pit stop. Is he going to win the race? It's going to be very close. It looks like Dylan Jones will win the race off pit road, just barely over Daniel Everhart. And how about David Washington coming out in 3rd, and then Comstock will come out in that 4th position. So not much changes at the front. The top 5 positions didn't change at all, as it will be Dylan Jones, Everhart, Washington, Comstock, and Bowie, your top 5 as they leave pit road.
Well, how big is that? Go ahead and qualify first and get that position on pit road to make it happen when you need to make it happen, and get off pit road in just the nick of time just to squeeze past Everhart. So there's the value of qualifying first. You get the best pit stall in the house, and if you're Dylan Jones, it plays to your advantage in this case. Take a moment here to remind you, while we have a moment, that tonight's broadcast of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series, presented by Gary Mercer Trucking, is also brought to you by Hippie's Paint Shop. Hippie's Paint Shop has over 5 years of experience providing top quality custom paint schemes for all iRacing vehicles at a low price. Because after all, at Hippie's Paint Shop, the cost isn't high, just the painter. And I know they've got a few fun ones out here tonight. Looks like everybody's just really brought their paint scheme game tonight at Dover. I've flipped through this field a few times, and I've seen a host of very interesting ones as I've gone up and down the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a track that can really present some cool paint schemes, because there's a lot of different things going on in this area with the autism awareness that this track does, and then just the fact that the paint schemes can really shine on this concrete surface. You can bring out something really pretty, and it really looks good on this concrete oval. Just a really good place to bring your special paint schemes and try to show them off here. It's just an absolutely incredible racetrack for that kind of stuff.
Figure our Hippies friends will probably be cheering for the house car, which tonight belongs to the 16 of Corey Wolf, carrying the colors of Hippies Paint Shop. So they'll be watching that 16 eagerly to see if he can get up towards the front of the field. In the meantime, though, we'll get back to the front of the field and action there, where we've got everything sorted. Lights are off on the pace car. We'll get the restart on lap 38, and it will be Dylan Jones, and then Daniel Everhart, and then David Washington, and then David Comstock and Brandon Bowie, your top 5. Then Andrew Farinars, Anthony DeBarra, Joseph Tice, Mike Kelly up in the top 10. I don't know if he's been up there yet, but it's the first time we've called his name tonight. And then you've got Trevor Rapallo rounding out your top 10. So, interesting little bunch of people here that we'll get to see go at it. Get another crack at a restart when we come around next time by, Mr. Macklin.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching the 42 of David Comstock. On the first 2 starts of the race, he really struggled to get up through the gears and get up to speed on the restart, and he's starting in the 4th position here. Interested to see if he struggles again, or if he's able to figure out what he's been doing wrong and can get up through the gears on this restart and get it better.
Might be changing his approach for this, because he has struggled, you're right. So let's see if it happens again this time. Yes, I believe the answer is absolutely. Not necessarily the greatest of restarts, though. The front 3 ahead of them got off pretty well. Jones is away here as we get the green. Washington up to 2nd now. Got around Everhart there on the outside, got the momentum. And then Well, not Washington. How about David Comstock there slides back to fourth, and then Brandon Bowie now driving underneath Farinars to get into the position. So when they come across the stripe, it'll be Jones, and then you've got Washington, Everhart, Comstock, and Bowie, who is still under fire for Farinars as they come through turn 2.
Yeah, side by side coming off the corner as Farinars is trying to get that position back from Bowie. He pins it to the bottom of the racetrack, slides up just a little bit, and is able to clear Bowie to take that 5th position back. Now DeBarro is going to try to do the same thing as he's right behind him. However, it looks like Bowie had the opportunity to make the crossover on Farinars. He decided not to do it. He stays in line behind him in that 6th position, and now starts to play a little defense as DeBarro is closing back in on him. He's only about a half a car length off the back bumper of that number 44 machine, trying to see if he can't get closer to the top 5 here.
Speaking of half a bumper, how about David Washington now really giving Dylan Jones a run for his money now that the gaps have been closed and Washington's been able to work his way up from the 9th starting spot on the grid to the front of the field. That 98 car is fast and race trim, and we may have a battle for the lead here within the next few laps.
Yeah, he is closed right in on the back bumper of Dylan Jones, giving him everything he's got at this point of the race, seeing if he can't get up there and put some pressure on him to make a mistake and see if he can't take the race lead away. And this is something that David Washington is very familiar with doing, and that's running at the front of the field. He's doing it once again here at Dover, and he is hard charging, trying to take that race lead away from Dylan Jones, but just does not seem to have the speed at this point. As you see Dylan starting to gap him just a little bit, not a whole lot, but he's starting to get a little bit of a gap built between these two, a little bit of breathing room for that 11 machine here.
Trying to find breathing room, but it's not quite coming because Washington got another really solid run through the corner and off the center of the corner through corner exit, and he's doing it again as they come through 3 and 4. Had to check up a little bit just to make sure that his run didn't carry him into the rear bumper of Jones, but Washington's there. He's putting the pressure on the 11 car.
Yeah, absolutely. Still staying right on the back bumper of Dylan Jones, waiting for him to make a mistake, seeing if he can't make him make that mistake. That is the most critical thing you can do when you're chasing somebody right now, is just get in their mirror, make them mirror drive. That makes drivers screw up and lose their focus, lose their concentration, and that's when you can try to capitalize and try to make the move for the race lead or whatever position you're battling for. They got to be careful, though, because Everhart's right behind these two, and he would like to get up there and make it a 3-way battle for the front. See if he can't try to spoil the party for both these guys and maybe get up there and take the lead away from them.
Also noticing that with the way Jones is running and the line that he's running, Washington isn't quite able to get up alongside him in the places that I think he would like. So we're beginning to see David Washington change his line ever so slightly, especially through the center of the corner. Just drives it in a little bit deeper and slides up higher, and then apex is lower off of corner exit. It's a little bit more varied than Jones's. Jones's is pretty stable all the way around, and it's just about the same spot. Save for this time around, though, because Jones slid up a little bit in response to try and match Washington. So gamesmanship here at the front of the field, not just with the pace, but with the lines these drivers are running as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that you'll see them do, especially when you're David Washington and you're chasing the guy behind it or in front of you. You have to move your line around to try to get some clean air on the nose of the car to make your car drive better. And when the leader sees you doing that and sees that it's working for you, he's going to move his line around to try to take that clean air away from you. So, like you said, a lot of gamesmanship being played right now between these two teammates, and the third teammate back there with Daniel Everhart's just sitting back like saying, all right, boys, I'm waiting for you guys to slip up so I can take the lead away from you. And then how about David Comstock hanging back there in fourth? He's the only driver really this season that has been able to compete with the Aegis drivers week in and week out, and he's trying to do so again. He's sitting in fourth right now.
Sitting in fourth and a little ways back from this front three. They've stuck together very nicely, and then Comstock's been able to hold down that fourth spot, and he's pretty much in a world of his own because he's got about a second either way of the front and the back bumper of that 42 to any other cars on this track. So a lot of space there. Meanwhile, here goes Daniel Everhart around Dylan Jones and David Washington around Dylan Jones. So Jones slips up, and we have a new leader for the first time tonight. David Washington to the point.
Man, that was a scary moment for both of those drivers, Dylan Jones and David Washington. Dylan got really high in the middle of 1 and 2 and almost got turned by David Washington in the middle of the corner. He had to check up because the car got extremely tight, it looked like, and Washington wasn't ready for it, almost got him in the left rear. That could have been disastrous for all three of these Aegis drivers as close as they were running together. Very lucky that that didn't turn out worse than it did, and that allows David Washington to take the race lead, but he's got Daniel Everhart sitting right there on his back bumper, now putting the pressure on him. So now the roles have been slightly reversed. Dylan Jones slips back to third, and you've got David Washington playing defense now over his other teammate, Daniel Everhart.
Two Aegis drivers and a power tech there in the top three. So a little bit of team action going on as well, and intra-team battles here for the race lead at Dover. And then you've got Kawasaki, and then Fariars and Navarro and Bowie, and then a whole host of people from Tice on back. That's about 5 cars in line, and here's a battle for position. Lionel Callisto now going underneath Nelson Rivera, so move that 97 up to the 11th spot. If he can make it stick out of the corner, he does. And a nice charge from Callisto at this point. Started 26th, now up just outside of the top 10.
Yeah, having a really good run. He didn't have the qualifying lap that he was looking for. Actually, didn't have a qualifying lap at all. He took a provisional to start this race, and he has just been very careful through the first 54 laps to not get himself into trouble, and it has paid off pretty well for him as he's just outside of the top 10. He's challenging Mike Kelly right now, seeing if he can't put a little bit of pressure on him. Watching these guys in front of him. How about Trevor Rapallo sitting up there in 9th? He's having a pretty good run at this point as well. And then Joseph Tice sitting right there in front of him. He won a couple of weeks ago at Kansas. He's just trying to have a good run as well, up in 8th.
Kelly changes his line a little bit, tries to block Callisto. That might be your best battle for position on track at this moment, because they're going after it in a way that not too many other people are at this moment, and that gap is tighter than the gap between just about any of the other pairings of cars you can find on this racetrack. Callisto hunting, trying to find a way around that number 2 Ford Fusion, but nothing going quite yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Just hanging in there right now, seeing it, waiting for his opportunity to go and an opportunity to pounce on Kelly to try to take that position away. But this is such a difficult track to set up somebody for a pass because of how tight the track is on corner exit. It's extremely difficult to get the run up off the corner. You have to wait and time that move right. And you see now Callisto is making that move as he is side by side with Mike Kelly. Kelly is going to try to hold him off as they come off the corner, and does so, using that outside line to get the run. He's able to maintain that position and gaps Callisto by just a little bit, and now he's going to be able to try to get away from him and see if he can't chase down Trevor Rapallo once again. Meanwhile, we do have a little bit of a battle starting to shape back up for the race lead as Everhart is about a half a car length off of the back bumper of David Washington, and Dylan Jones has closed back in on both these drivers. They're separated by less than 0.3 of a second right now. You can throw a blanket over these three, James.
They just refuse to let go of each other. Will be stuck together, and they've stayed within 0.3 of one another from front to back for just about all of this run. Jones getting loose there in turn 2 is about the only time where they haven't been within 0.3 of a second between one another, but very nicely settling in up there. And Everhart definitely would like to go get a win on a place that isn't a short track. Had some really good runs at Bristol and Richmond in April, but hasn't won yet on a mile or larger track, and definitely would love to change that here with a victory at Dover.
Yeah, absolutely. This track is a slightly confused racetrack. It races like a short track in the way you have to approach it, but it's got speeds like a 1.5 mile track. It's a very wild track as we're getting ready to see. I thought we were going to see a change for the race lead as it looked like Washington had a moment off turn 2. But it looks like he was just trying to gather the car up. He's able to keep it going though. But yeah, this is a very confused racetrack, and it's a lot of fun to race on. And now you see David Washington starting to move up his line, or I'm sorry, Daniel Everhart starting to move up his line a little bit as he moved up into that second group in the middle of 1 and 2, trying to get a run up off the corner, and it looks like it worked out for him. He now goes back to the bottom of the racetrack in 3 and 4, but it looks like these guys are starting to search around for some grip. The tires might have finally gotten to that point where they just don't have the grip that they were looking for. And it could also be that the track has just gotten so hot at the bottom of the track that there's a little bit of grip up top now, but these guys are starting to search around a little bit.
Beginning to hunt and find stuff and find things. That's what the best drivers in this series can do on a consistent basis, is find grip throughout the duration of a green flag run. And that isn't necessarily always in the same place on the track for a consistent 50, 60 laps. You have to move around a bit to find that extra tenth of speed once the tires are gone. And you know, if you can go up there and you can find the grip up there, why not use it? Because you'll have a little bit less rubber, a little bit cooler track to work with. And normally that wouldn't necessarily work, but when the tires are worn, grip isn't necessarily what matters the most. It's more just being able to hold the throttle through, and sometimes it's a little bit easier to do that up on the top than it is on the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this track gets so loose on corner exit that the less you have to turn the wheel on corner exit, the better. And once you get the tires wore out, you're really loose on corner exit. So if you can run up the track a little bit and keep yourself from having to turn the wheel as much, that's what you're going to do. And it's going to benefit you pretty well. As we see, you can see back there, Dylan Jones, he went up almost to that third groove in the middle of 1 and 2 that time. Gets a pretty good run off the corner. Not as good as a couple of laps ago when I saw Everhart doing it, but still a pretty solid run. He's able to maintain with the 2 guys in front of him, and he's doing it again down in 3 and 4, just trying to see if he can find something up there. This time, though, it doesn't look like it worked out too well for him, as he did lose some ground to the 2 guys in front of him. Gets a good run off the corner, though. You can see the amount of speed he's able to pick up on corner exit.
And I can also see that David Comstock may well just have a pretty good long run car, because he's finally beginning to reel in these front 3 after sitting behind them for about 20 laps. It's about 2/10 a lap over the last 2 to 3 laps that I've seen come off the gap from that 42 car to the race lead, and another 10th that time by. So Comstock might have that 42 set up for a long green flag run, and he might be a factor here for the race lead in about 10 laps.
Well, this is typical David Comstock. He has always been one of the better ones at conserving his tires and having speed on the long run. And I'm not surprised at all that he's doing it right here as he's starting to close in on the front 3. He's closed down to 9/10 of a second at this point, and he just keeps chopping that lead down lap after lap. And the longer this thing goes, the better his car seems to get. And that's the truth everywhere we go with him, it seems like. He's just so good. I've not seen very many drivers that can conserve their tires and show speed the way that he does week in and week out. This is why he's able to go up there and challenge these Aegis and PowerTech drivers the way he does, because he's just got some kind of a knack for that kind of stuff, and it's just really impressive to see.
He has been the main force in this series to compete with the Aegis and the PowerTech drivers so far. 2 wins on the season at Martinsville and 2 weeks ago at Charlotte. So big season so far for Comstock, and might have a say in this very quickly, because all of a sudden he is right there within a car length of the rear bumper of the 11 of Dylan Jones. So might have a battle for third here before too long.
Yeah, well, Dylan continues to try to run that middle to high groove in the middle of the corner, and he's not losing any ground, but it's just not working for him the way that I expected it to as the tires got to this point of the run. But he's doing a pretty good job at maintaining, but now you see Comstock still gluing that car to the bottom of the racetrack and continues to try to take time off of the race leaders, although he did not really gain that much on our race leader that last time by. He actually lost just a little bit to the race leader. So you have to wonder if maybe that's something to do with him now battling with Dylan Jones, as they are side by side now for that third position. Comstock was able to get to the door of Dylan Jones, and now is going to try to take that position away. He pins it to the bottom of the racetrack, but Jones is going to fight back on the outside here, as he's going to pinch him down coming off turn 2, see if he can't force him to have to check up off the corner, and it worked for him. They're still side by side. And you can see these guys
really tight stuff there between Comstock and Dylan Jones, fighting for that third position, still side by side.
Yeah, still side by side as they come off turn 2 right here. You see what's happening now is Comstock's just not able to get up off the corner and get the run that he's looking for, and this is hurting him because he's now using the tires up more than he wants to, and he gets sideways coming off turn 4, somehow manages to hang on to it. He got sideways trying to race with Dylan Jones, was not able to get clear of him, and somehow kept that thing off the turn 2, or the inside wall off of turn 4. Absolutely incredible save by the number 42 of David Comstock. Somehow manages to keep that car off of the inside wall, but now he's lost all that track position that he gained, as he's back to a 1.4 second gap on the race leaders, and he actually lost more than that as he's back to 1.7 now, as he's trying to chase these guys back down. and just see if he can't try to catch up to him.
Meanwhile, Anthony DeBarro cleared Andrew Farinas for the 5th position. So 96 car up another spot in all this and charging his way towards the front of this field. And Comstock, you're right, Brian Macklin. That was an incredible save by Dover standards, because 9 times out of 10, when you lose the rear end that much on corner exit, especially out of turn 4, you are destined to hit that inside retaining wall opposite pit road. And somehow he managed to save it and keep it off.
Well, not only that, but he was also able to keep it from overcorrecting back to the outside walls. We're starting to see some drivers come to pit road here. Thomas Lattimore, Austin Coop, a couple of drivers that have made their way to pit road. Also see that Randy Yoakum has come in. John Abbott, a couple of these drivers starting to come to pit road for tires. We may see some of the race leaders making that call now as these drivers start to come to pit road, because they're going to see a pretty significant difference in speeds. Right now, the race leaders are about 2 seconds off what they qualified prior to the race. And the longer this run goes, the larger that speed difference is going to get. And for some of these drivers that have already come to pit road, this is going to be a huge opportunity to gain some track position on them.
Track position, time. If you short pit, you gain some time, but you end up with more worn out tires. If we get another green flag run, you can regular pit and hold your spot. Do all sorts of crazy things here with the strategy. It's just what road you take. That's the interesting question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to believe that if anybody inside the top 10 makes their way to pit road, you're going to see the hands of these leaders be forced where they're going to have to come to pit road, because you cannot afford to give up that kind of time to guys that are within a few seconds of you now, because at 2 seconds a lap, if you stay out there for 7 or 8 laps longer than them, you're going to give up easily 15 to 16 seconds on them, and that's going to be time that you're not going to very easily make back up. So I think you might see these guys starting to dip to pit road pretty soon here, just so they don't have to worry about that speed difference. And here we go. You see the 2 race leaders, David Washington, Daniel Everhart, come to pit road. Just as I was saying, they have come to pit road, and that now cycles Dylan Jones around to the race lead. But Washington and Everhart on pit road, your first of the leaders to try to get their 4 tires and fuel here.
4 tires and fuel. The interesting thing, the interesting case, Dylan Jones making his way around as the race leader at the moment. When does he come down pit road? That might be the big question, because every lap he stays out on these old tires is time lost to the likes of Washington and Everhart. You have to believe he'll come down soon, lest he wants to lose maybe a second or 2 to the drivers that he was running with before these round of pit stops started.
Well, and the problem is, if he stays out too long, it's going to be more than just a second or 2. As these 2, Washington and Everhart, now leave pit road with their tires and fuel, they will lose at least a lap and a half to the race leader. But again, at 2 seconds a lap, it's not going to take very much time at all to get that back. And we still see both Dylan Jones and David Comstock staying on the racetrack. They have not come to pit road. Joseph Tice still out there on the racetrack. Brandon Bowie, Mike Kelly, Nick Silver, all of these drivers still on the racetrack. It looks like Dylan Jones is coming to pit road right now as he locks it up coming on to pit road. He could have been caught speeding. We'll have to wait and see, but he came in extremely hot. Not sure if he was able to get it down to pit road speed, but he is coming to the attention of his pit crew now, and that now moves David Comstock into the race lead, and we'll have to wait to see when he's going to come to pit road, as I think he might have been trying to right there. But he had some cars coming around on fresh tires, and he just wasn't able to get to the bottom of the racetrack to make his way to pit road.
How big could that be? Comstock tried, but he had, I believe it was Lionel Calistio and Andrew Farinas right in the way, and he couldn't get down to pit road, and those will be seconds lost to the likes of Everhart and Washington and Jones when he comes back onto the racetrack after his pit stop. So now I think he's decided to just kind of go with it and go on. Looking for the next car in line, Joseph Tice will be the next driver in line here. He's in second, and then Brandon Bowie currently sits in third. Nick Silver fourth, Sean Casto fifth. Both in those Prestige Worldwide Autism paint schemes for this week. So gonna watch and see what happens here. We could have a lot of interesting things happen, and it looks like, yes, here comes Tice down pit road. So the 5 car comes in for service.
And he's going to cleanly get on the pit road. And to update on Dylan Jones, he was able to get down to pit road speed, no speeding penalty for the 11 machine, so he was able to get off pit road cleanly with no issues there. But to Joseph Tice now, he gave up that second position, and he comes to pit road. But these guys have already ran about 5 laps longer than the other drivers that have already come to pit road. That's the equivalent to about 10 seconds on the racetrack. So it's going to be very interesting to see where some of these drivers come out when they do finally make their pit stop. If I'm David Comstock, I have to believe that the only thing you're looking for at this point is a caution that will trap some of these drivers a lap down. As right now we only have 10 drivers left on the lead lap. If you can get a caution at this point, you trap your biggest competition behind not only a lap down, but behind a lot of cars that they're going to have to pass once they get back on the lead lap. That, I believe, might be the only thing we're waiting to, or that David Comstock is waiting to see at this point.
Trying to find that golden goose yellow that will really shake up the strategy of this race if he gets it, if the car can make it that long. But have to believe now that the 42 is running close on fuel and definitely has worn tires. So could be an issue here before too long, because Comstock's trying to play the strategy card here, but he also has to make sure he doesn't lose control of his car in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go about 75 laps on a tank of gas here at the Dover International Speedway, and they last came to pit road on lap 35, it looks like, 35, 36. So he can go about 10 more laps or so before he's going to be forced to come to pit road. But I have to wonder maybe if he's trying to make this a one-stop race now that I look at that, because if he can make it to lap 100, that puts him at 70 laps. That puts him inside that window to make it to the end on fuel. So maybe he's going to try to just make this a one-stop race to the end, assuming it were to stay green to the end of the race. Don't know how that'll work out with the tire strategy, but fuel strategy, that would definitely get him to the end, where everybody else would have to come to pit road at least one more time compared to him only having to make that one-stop total.
That is absolutely a possibility, and I wonder if there are other drivers looking at this and saying the same thing, because I suspect that Comstock and Silver and Casto, and maybe even Dwayne Vincent too, since he's still out there on old tires, and would not surprise me at all to see those four try and stretch this and make this a one-stop race. We know they've played strategy in the past to get victories, so definitely not foreign territory to any of those four drivers, and it's just a matter of execution for the next few laps.
Yeah, absolutely. But the problem with this kind of strategy is if you look behind David Comstock, about half a straightaway is Daniel Everhart and David Washington. They have already closed that gap in, and they're only about 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds away from getting their laps back. And then when David does eventually come to pit road, he's going to give up all that track position. He could easily be a lap down when it's all said and done, assuming that he comes to pit road relatively soon, because these guys are getting ready to pass him. They're going to pass him in the next half a lap or so, as they're already right behind him, and actually they're not even going to go half a lap, as they're getting their laps back right now as they pass David Comstock. So at this point, I have to be slightly concerned about the situation that these drivers are going to be in, because the tire difference, I just don't know that staying out here this long is going to benefit them.
Unless you can make it all the way to the end with one pit stop and one set of tires. And I think at this point you almost hope that this race goes green the rest of the way if you're Comstock or Silver or Casto or Vincent. That's about the only way at this point that this strategy is going to work in any way, shape, or form. They need green flag laps. If they get a yellow right after they pit, it kills their strategy, and you just have to run like gangbusters up through the field and try and make up all of the track position that you gave up by running out these next few laps. And there it is. David Comstock says enough is enough and will be coming in this time by. So eyes up on the race leader. The 42 through 3 through 4 woes it down. Relatively clean entry for that Gary Mercer Trucking Chevrolet SS. But race leader now on pit road for 4 tires and fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lap ago, Sean Casto and Nick Silver gave up the second and third positions to also make their way to pit road. They have already been down and away and are getting back out onto the racetrack. But David Comstock gives up the race lead. He hands it over to Dwayne Vincent. He's coming to the attention of his pit crew. And now we're going to find out just how much that gap is to the other race leaders. Is actually Daniel Everhart and Washington have already passed Comstock, and Comstock just now got into his pit box. Again, I think this is going to end up with Comstock going a lap down to a couple of these drivers, because because as he's sitting in his box right now, he's getting his left side tires. Everhart is on the front straightaway at the start-finish line, and Comstock is just now leaving pit road. So indeed, he's going to fall a lap down to these drivers when it's all said and done.
Huge issue for Dwayne Vincent as he came down on pit road. He hit the water barrels at the edge of the pit entrance there and clipped the wall, and Nelson Rivera was coming in right behind him for service and had absolutely nowhere to go and just ran right into the rear of the 13, and now there's heavy mechanical damage to that 7 car, much less the sheet work and the sheet metal damage that's there. So big trouble for the 13 and the 7. They both tried to play strategy, and in that one instant it looks like they might have just I guess thrown it all away in Vincent's case and just been in a bad position in Nelson Rivera's case.
And this is one of the hardest tracks to come to pit road. As Washington's having an issue on the front stretch. He's wrecking on the front stretch. David Washington around on the front stretch and brings out the caution. Not sure what happened coming off the corner. This looks like he had some type of an issue. Looks like he might have got sideways, got loose off the corner, bounces off the inside wall, and then just couldn't keep the car straight as he is around on the front stretch. And this is what you did not want to see if you're David Comstock, because now you're trapped a lap down. Yes, you're going to be able to take the wave around, but he just lost all that track position, James. He's back in the 18th position. And Brandon Bowie as well is trapped a lap down as he's back in 16th position, also 1 lap down now that this has happened.
Big issues, and we thought that what happened today, or Dwayne Vincent, was big, but how about the points leader, David Washington? And it wasn't even that much of a bobble out of turn 4. It was very slight, but it was enough to throw him off and send him down into the inside retaining wall. And we've talked about it at multiple points in this broadcast about how you cannot lose the car on corner exit, and we had someone do it, finally, but it's the points leader of all people to run into trouble. Huge issues if you're the 98 car.
Boy, and other than Charlotte, he has had a rough stretch of races. He had a good run at Charlotte, but other than that, it has not been a good month and a half for our points leader. And somehow he still is the points leader coming into tonight, but that's an advantage of having the amazing start to the season that he's had. Of course, the points don't really matter for him because he is locked into the playoff with his 3 victories on the season, but just one of those deals where he just had a little bit of a bobble coming off the corner, and that was all it took. And unfortunately, it brought out a caution and really hurt his car too. He had some pretty heavy contact with the inside wall that's going to have him working on that car for a little while.
A long line of repairs looks like is the order of the day for that number 98 car, and going to be tough to really be able to salvage much of any good finish if you're David Washington now. So another really tough run of things here. Not a great stretch of races for the 98, and he's had the pace to try and go out and break his bad luck, but it's almost been 2 months straight of nothing but bad placement, bad incidents, and just running into problems for the 98 machine, and still has the wins and will still be in the playoffs. And maybe it's a good thing that all this is happening now and not in the fall, but still not necessarily great to see this continue to happen if you're David Washington. You'd like to think you need to shake this sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about this working out for a couple of drivers? Shane Ewing and Sean Boundy are 2 drivers that were staying out there as long as they could. I assume they were going to try to make it a one-stop pit stop to the end. And as a result of that caution, they get to keep their track position as they are sitting second. And actually, Sean Boundy did come to pit road. He's back in 7th right now. But it worked out really well for both those drivers. They're able to keep their track position.
So while we get everybody cycled out of pit road, we'll take a moment, now that we've crossed the halfway point of tonight's race, to take a look at our iRacing Midway Race Break, which is brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. In the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is a one-stop shop for online racing with officially sanctioned racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, the Car Store, USAC, and more. Daniel Everhart, your leader of this race. Then Shane Ewing, Andrew Farinars, Dylan Jones, Corey Wolf, your top 5, 6 through 10. We'll read Lionel Calisto, Sean Boundy, Mike Kelly, Trevor Rapallo, and Joseph Tice.
Anthony DeBarro is 11th, Austin Coop 12th, Thomas Lattimore, Carl Shedd, Brandon Bowie, your top 15. Then we have Nathan Little, David Comstock, Scott Walter, Nick Silver, and Sean Castro, the top 20.
21st, Ross Cato, Dwayne Vincent, currently 22nd last on the lead lap. John Abbott a lap down in 23rd, as are David Washington and Randy Yoakum in 24th and 25th. Then 26th, AJ Browning. 27th, Nelson Rivera. Then Gabe Wood, Braden Whitaker, Douglas Wyatt, and Gio Bermonti all out of the race. And this concludes your iRacing Midway race break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. For a limited time, you can visit iRacing.com/World of Outlaws and take advantage of exclusive promo codes to get yourself on the sim with a 1-year membership for half the price. As we get set for the restart to come on lap 107 of 170, 63 laps to go. When we get to the stripe, Everhart, Ewing, Farinars, Jones, Wolf, your top 5.
Pace car is in, and we are waiting for the restart. Everhart is on the loud pedal. We're back under green here at the Dover International Speedway. Everhart gets away. Freenar's right behind him as well. Shane Ewing did not get a good restart at all, as he has already dropped back to that 3rd position and is being challenged by Dylan Jones as they come off turns 1 and 2 right now. Jones battles on the outside line, trying to take that position away. He got a good run off the corner. Now he's going to have to try to make it work down in 3 and 4 as well. He's able to make the outside line work, and as they come off turn 4, he pinches Shane Ewing down, but is not going to get the run, and Ewing's still going to fight back as they head to turn 1.
Oh, Daniel Everhart went way wide into turn 1, and that gave Farinars the lead. Big time, off and away by about 4 or 5 car lengths, moved the 47 up to the front of this field.
Yeah, he had a big moment at going into the corner. Just looked like he could not get the car to turn, and unfortunately had to give up the race lead. He's been able to get it back going in the right direction now, as he still sits in that 2nd position, but a big moment for him. And now we see Dylan Jones really struggling, as he was just battling side by side with Shane Ewing about a lap and a half ago for 3rd. Well, he's all the way back to 7th now, as he falls in behind Mike Kelly. He just lost 4 positions in about a lap, as he just could not get that car to the bottom of the racetrack. Now they're starting to get single file through much of the top 10, as Dylan Jones finally was able to get his way to the bottom of the racetrack and get himself going back in the right direction.
You talked about this place racing like a short track earlier, Brian, and I'd say that might be the best example that we've seen of that all night long, where you end up trapped in a lane and you can't get down to the groove that you want to be in because there are other cars there. Don't necessarily see it all that often at Dover, but we see it at Bristol, and that's a track with a similar sort of setup, and not too surprised to see that it pops up at some point here. In the meantime, though, Farinars has jumped out to a half a second lead, and then it's a big-time battle here for 3rd, 4th, 5th. You've got Everhart, Calisto, Mike Kelly, Shane Ewing, and Corey Wolf running about as high as he's run all race long, up in the 6th position at the moment.
Yeah, he's having a great run. He took a provisional here tonight, started 27th to begin this race. Sits up there battling for a top 5 position at this point. Corey Wolf having an incredible drive. He's following Mike Kelly around right now, and Daniel Everhart. And how about Lionel Calisto all the way up to 3rd? Actually 2nd now, as Everhart slipped back just a couple of seconds ago and gave up that position. How about Calisto starting to make his way to the front? A different name we're calling for the race lead here, trying to get up there and try to chase down Freenars. They got a little bit of work to do, though, as they're a full second behind Freenars, but he's got a fast car and he's trying to use it now.
Calisto has had speed in some of these races, but just hasn't necessarily had the track position that he wants and had the qualifying efforts that he needs to be able to compete up at the front of the field like this. So this could be a big night for the 97 if he can keep it together for the rest of the night. Meanwhile, Anthony DeBarro has managed to sneak around Dylan Jones and is up to the 7th position and is coming quickly and has speed. So the 96 car trying to battle its way back up to the front of this field again and trying to make it happen. Ewing still hanging in there, as is Wolf, as is Kelly, as is Everhart. Calisto now jumping away from the 90 car just a little bit. He might just be running down Farinars, and we may have another battle for the lead here within the next 5 to 10 laps.
Yeah, Kalisto is looking like he's got a lot of speed in that car as he cuts another 10th off of Freenars right there. Really getting that car hooked around the bottom of the racetrack and being able to make speed through the middle of the corner. He seems like he's carrying a lot more speed through the center than we're seeing Freenars is right now, because Freenars is having to chase the car up the track in the middle of the corner just a little bit, where Kalisto is able to keep it pinned to the bottom. That helps with the speed, and you see it once again as he cuts another 10th off of the race leader, continues to close that gap. But he's got to be mindful of the fact that Daniel Everhart's right behind him as well, waiting in the waters for his opportunity to try to snatch that lead back from both of these drivers. Got to believe that Everhart, James, might have saw what Comstock did on that first run, managing those tires and really getting the good speed in the long run. He might be just trying to hang on for a little while and wait for the long run speed to come to him.
Might be possible. In the meantime, though, the gap between Kalisto and Freenars has come down 2/10 here in the last 2 laps. That Lucky Strike 97 car is coming, and he's doing it by getting an incredible run on corner entry more than anything else. He's going deeper than just about anybody else in the top 10, and he's making it work. He's coming. It's now down to about a car length here. Battle for the lead should be shaping up momentarily.
Yeah, down to about a car length as they head to turn 3, and he continues to just drive that car into the corner on corner entry, gets a great run, and is able to make it stick all the way to the exit as he's continuing to close that gap down. He's trying to get to him as quickly as he can. It's down to 0.2 of a second now as they work through 1 and 2. But you got to be mindful of the fact, James, that as hard as he's driving this car right now, if this thing stays green for a while, you have to believe those tires are not going to appreciate the way he's driving it, because the longer this run goes, the tighter that car is going to get, the more you're going to wear that right front out. At some point, this is going to come back to backfire on him if he doesn't manage those tires a little bit.
And as you say that, he's changed his approach in the corners a little bit and is running higher up the track now. Has moved up about a groove to go and take that middle lane away. And it does seem to have stalled his run to the front a little bit, and it seems like it might have helped Daniel Everhart, who is now come and closed right back to the rear bumper of that 97. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 for the race lead, right together back in sardines, just as it was with Washington and Jones and Everhart earlier. Same kind of situation once again here as they come out of turn 2.
Yeah, absolutely, as Everhart is right on the back bumper of Kalisto, who's right on the back bumper of Freenars, and Freenars almost gets turned by Kalisto in the middle of the corner as Lionel got a great run in the middle of the corner as now he gets sideways off turn 4. He almost lost it like we saw Comstock do earlier, hangs on to it, holds off Everhart, continues to hold that second position, but now he's going to have a challenge as Everhart gets loose off turn 2. You can see these guys are really chasing the cars right now, and Freenars is loving what he's seeing in his mirror because that allows him to hold on to the race lead, and he was able to get a slight break from these guys as now he's got about a car length and a half over Lionel Kalisto, but he's not going to have that break for long as Lionel is starting to run him back down already, closing that gap back up on him.
That maneuver from Everhart out of view cost him 0.4 of a second. Kalisto's been able to gather it back up and for the most part stay with the 47 after his little mishap out of turn 4. But Everhart really did pay the price a little bit, so it might take a few laps for him to get back up this battle and try and go get second and the race lead once again. That being said, though, with all this battling and all this slipping and sliding, look who's coming to the picture there within a second of all of this. Mike Kelly in the number 2 machine has quietly made his way up from the 15th position, and Corey Wolf there too, who started 27th on a provisional tonight, didn't even take a time in qualifying and has come up through this field. Both those drivers having really, really strong top 5 runs so far.
I've raced with Mike here on this track in the official iRacing sessions before, and he loves racing here at Dover. This is one of his favorite tracks. He's gotten quite a few wins here in the past, and he definitely knows how to get around here. No surprise at all that as we get to the last 50 laps of this race that he is starting to climb his way up. But we have a battle for the race lead. Here comes Kalisto to the inside of Freenars as they go through 1 and 2. There's a lap car ahead of him, though. Is that going to be a factor? As Kalisto got sideways off the corner. That allows Everhart to take that position. Everhart moves in the second, and now he's going to try to chase down Freenars as they still approach this lap car coming up off turn 4. It looks like they're going to get by cleanly, and now Everhart closes right in on the back bumper of Freenars. We've got a really big battle shaping up here.
Couldn't quite tell if Everhart got into the back of Kalisto or if Kalisto just got loose. They were close enough that either one was possible from the vantage point that we have here up in the booth, but tight enough that it's drawn everybody back together, and now Mike Kelly has come into within a half second of this. He was really the big winner on that one because he picked up about 2 or 3 tenths of a second there.
Yeah, absolutely. As he continues to close that gap on the 3 in front of him, he's looking at this and saying, please keep battling because you're allowing me to catch up. But now they've gotten a little strung out as Kalisto has fallen a little bit off of these two. Everhart, though, trying to chase down Freenars. It looks like he's got a really fast car at this point of the run. He's able to get right to the back bumper of Freenars, but just not able to make that move as he closes right in on him in the middle of the corner, trying to take the air off the spoiler, see if he can't get him to get a little loose coming up off the corner, and it just was not able to work for him. Is now right on the back bumper of Andrew Freenars as they work through 3 and 4 here, trying once again to take the air off that spoiler, but just cannot get it loose enough where he can make the move he needs to make.
Made it work with Kalisto, figures that the same game plan will work with one of his teammates who also has a win so far this season. Fun battling here between the top 2 drivers. Kalisto's dropped off a little bit. Now there's the run that Everhart was looking for. Renars knows that the nose is underneath, has to give up the position, at least on the inside. Won't give up the race position yet. He'll get credit for this lap, but Everhart's there. Might have the lead when they come out of 2, but he can't quite get the run there either. They'll be side by side down the back straightaway for the race lead.
Freenar's trying to defend the race lead as he's using that outside line, trying to pinch down the 90 as he swings really low in the middle of the corner, then washes up the track, trying to pinch Everhart down off the corner, see if he can't get the run. They almost made contact, and at the stripe, I believe Everhart might have just got him just by a half a nose or so. Everhart did lead that lap, but Freenars is not willing to give it up. But it looks like Everhart's going to make the pass and takes the race lead on lap 133. But Freenars is not going to give up as he fights back to the bottom of the racetrack. Did not get the run into the corner that he was looking for. He had to play defense when Kalisto was trying to make the move on into 3.
Just had to gather it back up and make it stick. That's the key here. Also of note here, we've got the lap car of Nathan Little, I believe, is on fresh tires here to change up things a little bit. So he might be able to drive around all of these front 3 cars and may break them up a little bit. He's already cleared Kalisto and put about a car length and a half or 2 in between Kalisto and Freenars, and now will work underneath the 47 to try and get his way back towards the lead lap. But will break up this front pack ever so slightly. Will that 41 car?
Yeah, absolutely. With him trying to work past Freenars and Kalisto, he was able to put a little bit of a gap between them and Everhart, and now he's going to be trying to do the same thing to Everhart, see if he can't get one of his laps back, as he is 3 laps down right now. He's going to just try to pull, it looks like Everhart's going to pull over and let him by, so he's going to get one of those laps back, and that does allow Freenars to close back in on Everhart just a little bit, but not enough to where he could challenge for anything. But how about Mike Kelly still hanging back there in 4th? He's about 1.1 seconds behind these guys, just biding his time, waiting for the right time to strike as he stays close enough to where he can make the move if he needs to, but not close enough to where he's in any danger should anything happen in front of him. He's just kind of waiting there for the right opportunity to move.
Waiting. That's the key, I think, if you're Kelly. Not quite sure he's got the pace to compete with these front 3 cars, but certainly has the pace to stay there. And if they slip up and anything happens, that 2 car is right there to take advantage of what would be, if the checkered flag fell right now, I believe a season's best finish for that 2 car, who was in the championship 4 last fall at Homestead, Miami, was able to play pit strategy at Phoenix and get the victory there to lock himself into the battle for the crown. Came up unsuccessful down over in Homestead, but definitely has the know-how and the smarts to make it happen here in the Full Throttle Cup Series, and definitely has no problem just sort of waiting and biding his time in the event that something happens ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can confirm that if he can finish in that 4th position or better, it'd be his best finish on the season. He's only got 1 top 5 so far this season in the Full Throttle Cup Series, and that was a 5th place at Atlanta back in March. He does have a handful of top 10s. He's got 4 top 10s, it looks like, maybe 5 top 10s actually, on his season so far, but only that 1 top 5 back at Atlanta. He's hungry to try to get back into the top 5 and get a good finish, and he's got a pretty good run going for him right now. If he can hang on for another 30 laps or so, he'd get his 2nd one on the season.
Trying to earn valuable points to get him a little bit higher up in that grid. He's about just under 40 points clear of Scott Simley, who holds that final cutoff spot. So almost a race ahead of that. But of course, that can change if we get winners mixed up and we get some new faces into victory lane. Kalisto would be the one, I think, to note. He has not won a race yet and would thrust himself right into the playoff grid if he can pull the victory out here today, and that changes things. And I think if you go a little bit further down that grid with your, Ross Cato, Carl Shedd, Stefan Marinak, and Simley, and you have a guy like Kalisto who's running really well, those are the types of drivers and races that you have to sweat out, because if they can get it done, that's your playoff spot gone to them, and now you have to find a way to either go point your way back in once again or find a way to win a race.
Well, and truthfully, for Lionel Kalisto, he's 60 points off the cutoff right now, which is more than a full race behind. And while he's got time to make that points gap up, the easier solution would be just to go out here and get a victory, because then you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't matter where you're at in the points, because you got the win, you're locked into the playoffs. It's going to be much easier for him in the situation he's in just to try to win here today at Dover or in a couple of weeks or whatever. And you do, like you said, you have to be mindful, if you are a Scott Simley or a Stefan Marinak, that he's running this well, because if something happens to the front runners, if he can find a way around Daniel Everhart and Freenars, this could be a new playoffs berth for somebody. So got to be careful with what's going on here for these drivers.
Also of note here, up at the front of this field, you've got the lap car Austin Coop running past the leaders on fresh tires. Not too much of a contest there from Everhart. We'll just go ahead and let that 6 car go by and resume this battle here with these front 4 and 5 cars. Meanwhile, Dylan Jones all of a sudden has come back up towards the front of the field. He got around Mike Kelly for the 4th spot, so now the 11 car sits in P4 and is beginning to run down the 97 of Kalisto. So you might have nailed something there, Macklin. The 97 might have run his tires off, because that 11 car is coming for that 3rd position very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely he is, and it just looks like at this point that Kalisto ran too hard at the beginning of the run. He tore up that right front tire. You can just tell that he's not getting the run through the middle of the corner, not being able to drive that car on corner entry the way he was at the beginning of the run. And now you see Dylan Jones, he just closed in a ton of time on him in the middle of that corner and closes in on him again here through 1 and 2. He's right on the back bumper, and Dylan is not only catching Lionel Kalisto, but he's also catching our race leaders. He was over 2 seconds behind just about 3 laps ago, and that gap is down to 1.3. So you have to wonder if Dylan Jones decided to lay back and wait for this point of the run, much like I was talking about with Everhart, and it looks like it's paying off for him now as he's moved up into that 3rd position. He was able to get around Kalisto, and that gap is now 1.2 seconds back to the race leaders, and only about a second back to Andrew Freenars right now.
Only about a second back to Freenars, and basically you've got 12 tenths of a second to make up in about 20 laps, 21 here as they come across the stripe. So you all can do the math at home, begin to figure out how soon Dylan Jones can get up there, if he can consistently chip away at the lead of Everhart and Freenars like he has been doing the past 10-15 laps, because we're getting down to it here and this field is pretty well spaced out. I think we shouldn't see a caution just from close racing off of a restart in most cases. You would think, statistically speaking, with the way this race has panned out, it should go green to the rest of the way. But those are only stats. That's not what actually takes place in the sim, and that can be a different matter altogether, and a yellow flag at this point would really shake things up, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I think the one thing that we would see across the board, though, would be 4 tires for every driver in this field, because as long as this green flag has been, or green flag run has been, they're back to that point where they're about 2 seconds a lap slower than what they were at the beginning of this run. So certainly if we do get a caution, there will not be very much on pit road wise for strategy. It's just going to be a matter of hitting your marks, getting a clean stop, and getting the track position to set yourself up for what would potentially be the final restart. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about the green flag action that is going on right now, and what I'm seeing is that Dylan Jones is continuing to close that gap down, James. He's down to 0.7 of a second behind our race leader, and he is coming. He has moved that groove up just a little bit on corner entry. He kind of arcs the corner, gets that run off the corner, and it's really working out for him as he gains another full 1/10 of a second off of the race leaders. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he catches the leaders at this point.
About half a second in 5 laps for that 11 car. He's coming, and I think Farinars might have seen the charge coming from Jones and decided that it was time to go as well, because Farinars all of a sudden has picked up the pace a little bit. So here comes Farinars now. Might have seen Everhart smack the wall just a little bit on corner exit there. He was a little bit slow down the straightaway. That might change things here a little bit. Here comes Farinars now within a car length and a half, and it might be 1 as they go through 3 and 4.
Farinars looked in the mirror, he saw that 11 coming, so he picked the pace up, and now he's trying to challenge the race leader here as they get down to the last 15 laps of this thing, as now we see Dylan Jones go wide in 1 and 2. He runs up the track, uses that banking to try to carry the speed off the corner, and he gets a huge run off turn 2, tries to set himself up to make a move on Farinars. He just was not quite able to get there, and he's going to do it again down here in 3 and 4, moves up the racetrack, looking for the run off the banking, off turn 4, gets another solid run. Is he going to have the run he needs? Yes, he is. To the inside for second place as they head to 1.
You know, I said that Everhart might have clipped the wall and messed up his corner entry there about 2 laps ago, and then Farinars did it maybe 2 corners after Everhart did it, and that set up Jones to go get the second position. So now here's your race for the race lead. Jones has cleared Farinars, and now it's Jones and Everhart here with less than 15 laps to go to decide tonight's race at Dover.
And Dylan Jones continues to run that middle groove, getting such a good run off the corner. You can just see the speed difference coming up off these corners compared to both Farinars and Everhart as he closes that gap to the race leader of Everhart down to just about 2 car lengths now through 3 and 4. Had to run the bottom of the racetrack because of a lap car, and he was not able to use that run that he'd been getting. Still gets a pretty solid run up off the corner and is able to get that gap down to just 0.2 of a second. And now once again, up the hill, up the banking, trying to get the run off the corner, and he is just doing such a good job at this point, James, carrying that speed off the corner better than both these guys around him.
Jones trying to break a winless drought here that extends back to the second race of the season at Atlanta. Not a long one by the standards of he and the Aegis Motorsports team, but definitely more races in between victories than he would like, and is trying to mix it up here and get to the rear bumper of Everhart to go grab the lead and potentially the race win. Now down to about a half a car length, if that. Everhart slides up the racetrack, tries to mimic and copy and defend his line and make sure that Dylan Jones doesn't get any nose underneath him, but it might not be enough because that 11 car, especially on corner exit, really gets a good drive off.
Yeah, absolutely, as he does it once again right here, right on the back bumper. You could put a piece of paper between these two. That's how close they are right now. Tries to look to the outside of Everhart. He's going to get there. No. He got shoved up the racetrack by Everhart just a little bit. Everhart tried to take that line away from him, and it worked. He was able to defend the race lead, but now once again, Dylan Jones to the outside, trying to make that outside line work once again. And now Farinars is starting to get back into the picture, as with these two racing, he's been able to close back in on him. And we see once again Jones to the outside, trying to get up there to the outside right rear of Everhart. But once again, Everhart shoves him up the track and is able to defend that race lead.
Everhart forcing Jones up high to make sure that he can't get the run through the middle of the track the way that Jones wants to. And you're right, Farinars has been able to come back and make some sort of charge at this. Might not be done yet for the 47 if the 11 and the 90 get into it too much. But still charging is Dylan Jones, still trying to make it happen here. Off to complete lap 162 when they cross the straight. Everhart got a little loose off the corner, but didn't quite get loose enough to give Jones the room he needed to get there. And now here comes Jones trying to get underneath Everhart as they come out of the corner.
Dylan Jones is going to have to do something different if he wants to take the race lead away from Everhart. We've seen Everhart is going to take that line away and not allow him to use that outside line to take the position. So he's going to have to go to the bottom of the racetrack if he wants to take the race lead. That's his only option at this point, unless he can find a way to get to the outside of Everhart. Now he's getting challenged from Farinars as he went wide in 1 and 2. Farinars went to the bottom. Farinars was not able to get the run up off the corner and has to stay in third for the time being. Dylan Jones now tries once again to get to the back bumper of Everhart and see if he can't make a move for the race lead. We're coming to 6 laps to go at the stripe right here.
Here we go, 6 laps left. Here comes Jones once again. Got the chance to regroup and then didn't quite make it work, and now is trying to both hold off Renars and go find a way around Everhart. Not an easy task, and got a little bit loose there off corner entry. Didn't quite, or corner exit rather, didn't quite have the run that he wanted, and now here he goes to the bottom. So there's the move that you were talking about, Macklin, trying to find a different way around Everhart, because you're right, Everhart's blocking that middle top line and will not let Jones get the run around the outside.
This is going to be his only option at this point if he's going to make a move for the race lead. He's seen that Everhart's going to take that line and use it to his advantage to keep Dylan from being able to make the run. He's going to have to try something different. He went to the outside again in 3 and 4, tries to get the run off the corner, but just can't make the car stick enough to get there. He's got a good run off the corner. This could be his opportunity to go to the bottom of the racetrack. He's not going to be able to get there, and now they both go to the bottom in 1 and 2. Almost makes contact with Everhart in the middle of the corner as he got right on the back bumper of him, as now he's going to have to try to set him up again down here in 3.
We'll try and have a few more shots. Now they both go to the outside. They both wash up the track a little bit, and it won't be enough room for Jones to get there. He gets a good run off the corner, though. Everhart there to block. Makes it stick, does that 90 car. 3 laps now to settle this race. It's over. Jones is still there. Everhart doing everything he can to hold off the 11 car, and he's done it so far. Just a few laps left to hang on to it now, but here comes Jones to the inside.
Jones looked to the inside. Everhart threw the block once again. He was not able to get there, so he had to change up his line. Coming to the strike, 2 laps to go. Can Dylan Jones make the move for the race lead? He looks to the bottom, now to the top as they head to 1 and 2. Going to try to carry that speed off the corner, but he gave up a ton of time this time. He's going to have to get a big run off the corner, and here he comes as he tries to close back in on Everhart.
A decent run off the corner, but he didn't quite get it lined up down the straightaway, and he might have one more shot here on the last lap. They come around turn 4, nothing crazy yet. Big run for Jones. White flag here, and he's to the outside of Everhart.
And there was a lap car there that caused Dylan Jones to miss his opportunity. He was side by side with Everhart, but he was not able to take advantage of it because of the lap car. Now as they come off turn 3, they're side by side heading to the corner. Looks like Everhart's going to throw the block one last time.
He threw the block, it might be enough. Is he going to get a bump? He gets a little bit of a bump from Jones. Will he get one more? No, he won't. He'll make it stick. And Daniel Everhart hangs on for the last 20 laps and holds off a hard-charging Dylan Jones to take the victory tonight at Dover.
What an incredible finish here at the Dover International Speedway for these 3 Aegis drivers, or PowerTech and Aegis drivers. Absolutely incredible what these guys were able to do here at the end of this thing. One of the best races I think we've caught all season long, James. This was awesome.
Really, really tight stuff there at the end. And if you want a master class in how to defend the race lead and take away a line, you'll go back and you'll watch the last 20 laps. Jones was coming, had the faster car, but Everhart took away the line, and that's all he needed.
Yeah, absolutely. He watched what the 11 was doing in his mirror and just decided that he was going to do what he had to do to defend that lead. And that's what you see these guys do week in and week out. And one thing I want to say, when you're racing with your teammates the way these 3 were, you know you can trust each other to race as hard and as aggressive as the 3 of them did here tonight. They knew they could race each other just as hard as they wanted, and there wasn't going to be any issues. And if there was, it wasn't going to be because of any intentional wrecking. It was just going to be good, hard racing between the 3 of you.
I'm sure they'll have a story to tell in just a moment, and we'll get to that story when we interview both drivers as part of our post-race interviews, which we will have for you on the other side of this commercial break here on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing. And as we go to commercial break, we'll take a look at one of the newest vehicles coming to the service, the 2016 GTE Pro Class Champion at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the new Ford GT.
When I sat in the car, you always wonder, what's it going to feel like? You know, it was my first time driving a mid-engine GT car. You know, my thoughts were, wow, this is really good for our first time in a car. I was really surprised by it. You're sitting low, you got the A-pillars at steep angles, the windshield's at steep angles, you can see the fender flares. I think we have a chance to win. Everything's got to go right, but I think we have a car that can win the race or be on the podium. but can you imagine how cool that would be to go back 50 years later to the year and do it?
Hi guys, I'm Scott Speed, driver of this amazing Volkswagen Beetle GRC car. I got good news for the iRacing fam. We got this coming in. I'm currently working on it myself personally to make sure that it is as accurate as possible. With the addition of dirt and now this mean car, it is gonna be so fun. And it's gonna be available free to all the iRacing members. Personally, I can't wait to get out there and race you guys on it.
Welcome back to coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series here on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing. And tonight's event in this series, presented by Gary Mercer Trucking, is complete at Dover. Round 13 of the books. Daniel Everhart gets the victory after holding off a very, very impressive charge from Dylan Jones for the last 20 laps. Now that we have everything complete, it's time to take a look at our full field rundown and see where your favorite driver finished. And that is brought to you tonight by Joel Real Timing. Coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series is brought to you by Joel Real Timing, which is the official timing software of LSRTV. Whether you spend your time on the sim behind the wheel, on the pit box, or from the spotter stand, Joel Real Timing is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. You can get yourself a basic download for free or get the pro version today at joel-real-timing.com. Daniel Everhart comes away with another victory here in the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series tonight at Dover. Dylan Jones almost had this race won, but will settle for the runner-up spot. A strong run tonight from Andrew Farinars, comes home third when it is all said and done. And Lionel Kalisto with the season's best fourth place finish. A great run for that 97 car tonight. Joseph Tice won at Kansas and comes home in the fifth spot with the number 5 car. Fitting, that is. Carl Shedd hits the 6th position today. When it's all over, David Comstock finishes 7th. Trevor Rapallo comes home 8th. Mike Kelly 9th. Nick Silva to round out your top 10.
Anthony DeBarro will finish in the 11th position here tonight. Shane Ewing will come home in the 12th position. Then we have Sean Casto finishing 13th. Sean Boundy finishes 14th. Then we have Corey Wolf finishing in the 15th position. 16th goes to Thomas Lattimore. And 17th, and the final car on the lead lap here tonight, Dwayne Vincent comes home in 17th, trying to just salvage a finish after having his miscue coming on the pit road under green and hitting the tire barriers. Gets the 17th place finish. Brandon Bowie is the first car one lap down to finish in the 18th position. Austin Coop comes home 19th, and after battling for the race lead and having an issue on the front stretch, David Washington finishes 20th, one lap down.
21st is John Abbott, the last car one lap down in this race. Nathan Little finished in 22nd. 2 laps down. Other drivers 2 laps down in this race were Scott Walter, who finished 23rd, AJ Browning, who finished 24th, and Randy Yoakum, who finished 25th. Ross Cato was the only driver 3 laps down in 26th. Nelson Rivera was the, last car to retire from this race after running into Dwayne Vincent on pit road. Finishes 27th. 28th went to Gabe Wood. Braden Whitaker finished 29th. And then it was Douglas Wyatt and Gio Bromonti who rounded out your field tonight. And there is your full field rundown brought to you by Joel Real Timing.
All right, and we're about to go to Victory Lane down here. And tonight's Victory Lane celebration and our top 3 interviews are going to be brought to you by RealSimRacing.com. Tonight's broadcast, once again, is brought to you, or of the Full Throttle Cup Series, is brought to you by RealSimRacing.com. RealSimRacing.com has a league for every iRacing driver, including the Winston Cup Series on Wednesday nights and the Midnight Thunder Speedway Series on Thursday nights. For more information, visit www.realsimracing.com. And now, as we go to Victory Lane, James Pike, you have caught up with the winner of tonight's race after an incredible battle with his teammates. Daniel Everhart is in Victory Lane.
Daniel Everhart with one of the unquestionable drives of the season to keep it in front after a very, very strong run from Dylan Jones, who had a very, very fast piece in those final closing stages, but couldn't quite find a way around the number 90 machine. And it's Everhart that ends up going to Victory Lane this evening, and we will have him here just a moment to talk to you all after a very, very impressive run. But Brian, just talk about what you saw in those last 20 laps.
I mean, it was an absolutely incredible race between 3 drivers that knew they could race each other as hard as they wanted and do whatever they needed to get the victory. And just absolutely incredible how hard these guys raced each other. I was impressed that Everhart raced his teammate as hard as he did. I really thought that maybe they'd give each other a little bit more slack, but both of them had wins coming into tonight. They were both locked into the playoffs, as well as Freenars with his win a couple weeks ago at Kansas. So really nothing to lose for these guys. They could just go out there and be pretty aggressive, and if something were to happen, they were still going to be all right.
Well, after that run, he took a little bit more time than normal to get out of his car and get ready to talk to us. But you heard Mr. Macklin mention it. And now we'll turn to the driver who made it, Daniel Everhart. Those last 20 laps with Dylan Jones, tell us how you were able to hold that 11 car off, because he was so quick in the final stages of this race.
I never looked out the front windshield. Rearview mirror was the best friend tonight. Watching him, I was just trying to see what line he was taking, and he looked like he was trying to get a long run into the corner, and I was just trying to take his line away to the outside and try to diamond the corner coming off. Not really even trying to diamond it, trying to go in high to block his line, and then take it all the way down to the bottom to get the run off. And it was working. And he tried to give me the bump and run on turn 3 and 4, and I knew he was back there waiting. He was just waiting for the right move, waiting for me to mess up, and I tried to use the lap car as a pick, and it really helped out at the end of that race.
And how hard was it to adjust to that kind of racing when, for the first 140 laps, it had been a relatively clean race for you? You hadn't really had to deal with any issues in a way that I think had been rare for just about anybody in this series. And to have to flip the switch, to go from calm and collected racing to just guns blazing for the last 20 laps, is that a difficult shift to make while you're behind the wheel?
Well, not really. You kind of drive the car the same. You just have to change your lineup a little bit, and it really turns down to muscle memory. You run the same consistent line, and then having to change it up, it kind of messes with you. But after you learn it, it just comes right to you, and kind of got to pay attention. And it takes a lot of looking around and finding out where the lines are running, and looking up in your rearview mirror, watching Jones. And I knew he was faster. He was a whole lot faster than me. He was back there saving his tires, and he was doing everything he could. And I knew that me and him, how we raced at Richmond, it was going to be another fun one. But
And looks like we're going to have some technical issues, unfortunately, here, so we're not going to be able to bring you the rest of the post-race interviews, but we'll see if we can get back to that here in a moment. But just an absolutely fantastic run by Daniel Everhart towards the end of that race. Did a great job, and overall fantastic job by the Aegis guys. They stayed out front all race, did a fantastic job, and congratulations to Daniel Everhart on the win. So, well, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get back with everyone else. So, well, I guess we'll just have to cap it off here. So, for more information on the Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series and RSR.com, you can go to their website, of course, the Real Sim Racing League, www.realsimracing.com. And we do, of course, want to thank the admins of this series, John Abbott. And, of course, for everyone here at LSRTV, well, for myself, Cisco Scaramuzzo, which I guess I'm going to finish this off myself, and, of course, for James Pike and for Brian Macklin, this has been coverage of the Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series. And tune in next week as we're going to head to the Super Speedway at Daytona. But for everyone here at LSRTV, take it easy.